Welcome back to another video right here on Free Will Photos. Today, we are going to edit this portrait, and if you'd like to follow along, you can download this file using the link in the description box below. Now, the issue that I have with this particular image is I don't have enough headspace above the model's head here. And this could be a very common thing. And as long as you're not cutting off prominent features, what I'm about to show you is probably going to work just fine. And when I say cutting off prominent features, I mean, if you didn't cut off the top part of the head here, like we're only missing a very small sliver of the head there. So this is a perfect opportunity for Generative Expand. Now, if I hit the letter C on my keyboard, I get the cropping tool. And as you can see, we're set to original aspect ratio. And I have the canvas extension turned off. So what that means is if I pull this node up and down, I can only go as far as the canvas boundary. All right. The canvas boundary in most cases is going to be the original framing of your image after you've imported it into ON1 and opened it up. That is going to be your canvas framing. But what I need to do is extend the canvas by a few more pixels to allow ON1 to add in information. In order for me to do that, I have to come up here to Canvas Extension and then click the drop down and click Local Gen AI. Now you could do Local Non-Gen AI, but I personally get good results with the Local Gen AI. And I do have one of the computers that this works pretty decent with. So I'm going to go ahead and click Local Gen AI. And then I don't really need to extend the left and the right sides of this image, because if I pull up right now, you can see that I'm getting this little gray boundary area outside of the image. I don't really care to have that. So let's just go ahead and undo that by hitting Command and Z. And I'm going to come over to aspect ratio and click on freeform. So what this allows me to do is just pull on the top node here to extend the top part of the canvas. And I only need a little bit of headspace, so I'll probably go this far. Now, I want to make note right here that this is typically how I get the best results. An image that has a background that is completely blown out, and I'm also not trying to extend a whole lot. If I were to come like way up here, that's a lot more information that ON1 needs to generate. Usually doesn't work out the best. All right. So what I like to do is only come up just to about here, and that's where I get the best results when I do this. And that's going to be plenty of room for me to work with a recrop. So I'll just go maybe right there. All right. And in order to generate this, I'm just going to hit the blue check mark and let ON1 do its thing. Now, this could take a little bit of time based off of your machine's specs. So if this does, then perfect time to go grab a coffee or anything of the sort. But I'll jump to the end result once it is done. Okay, so now we are at the end result, and you can see it has given me a secondary layer here. All right. And up here at the top, you'll notice that I have some weird looking color things that are going on there. I'm not going to worry about that though, because what I can do is, one, I can just open up the retouching tools, make my brush size a little bit larger. Let's use the bracket keys here. And I'm just going to paint over this area and then resample somewhere around here so it's pretty close to the same. And boom, problem solved, right? You could argue, well, this doesn't look the greatest, but that's okay. It's not even a detailed area, right? It's way more believable is what I'm getting at. So now I'll just go ahead and hit the blue check mark here to commit that. And it's time to recrop this, because Maybe the whole reason I wanted that headspace was so I could crop this image a little bit better. So if I hit the letter C, I have a few options to me now. And what I really wanted to do here is kind of crop him in to put him on this right third. All right. So a little bit more like down the ear line here. So I'm going to use freeform to do that. I'm just going to pull this in a little bit, maybe a little bit further, and drag this over. And then I'm going to pull up from the bottom to make this a little bit more of a regular size crop, if you will. So maybe something like that, right? I don't really care to have that pocket in the shot. And this is all personal preference. So what you choose to do with your image is completely up to you. I'll say that that's good. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit the check mark to commit that. I now have the crop that I want on this image. So now it's time to really start modifying this image and making the edits. So I need to get rid of this little red blemish here. I'm going to come back to our retouching tools, and I'll make my brush size a little bit smaller, and we will just paint right over this little area. And that's looking pretty good. And I'll go a little bit smaller and maybe get rid of some of these darker spots on his face. You don't have to do this, but you know, sometimes it helps to get rid of things that are prominent on the face that you don't really want to be there. And now that I'm looking at that area, it doesn't look the greatest, so I'm just going to resample this, but I'm being really nitpicky here. So we'll come down here, look over his jacket. I think that that looks fine. Oh, nope, there's this weird hair. So let's get rid of that. All right. So I'm just going to paint this area right here. And then I'm going to sample into the blue. Notice that I'm breaking this up a little bit. And the reason is the bottom portion of the hair is actually blue, or at least it was going over the blue part of his jacket. And then the top portion of the hair is going over this white part. So I'm going to sample in two different areas, so that way I get a more realistic look. So maybe something like that. And you can definitely play around with this. Clone stamping may be the better option. I'm using the healing brush, but if I hit Command and 0 and zoom out, you can kind of tell, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to clean that up. There's ways of cleaning that up. And if you are interested in learning more about using the retouching tool, at least the healing portion of the tool, then check the link in the description box below. You can definitely learn more from that video. With that being said, I think I'm good with retouching like so. So we'll go ahead and hit the blue check mark. Now it's time to do a little bit of that tonal separation. There are two things that we need to pay attention to when editing images. The first one is tonal range, and the second one is the color in the image. So what I like to do is add a black and white filter, and I've recently started doing this. So if you haven't seen it in previous tutorials, then that's okay. The reason I add the black and white filter is I want to get rid of the color, but I don't want to do it through the develop module because I may need to work with this color later down the line. So I don't want to just pull back on the saturation completely. I just want to have something that I can turn off and turn on. All right. You could just desaturate the image and work with just your tones, but I'm not going to worry about that. Then I'll come into tone and color. And this is where I like to start working through my camera profiles just to see what I like the most on the image. So we'll just kind of filter through these, and I don't know exactly where I want this image to go, although camera landscape looks pretty good for the tones. And I know that I'm going to reintroduce color. So these camera profiles are going to play a huge role on the overall color. But right now I'm only looking at the contrast. Okay. And that's the reason why I use the black and white filter. And again, you'll see that here in a second. All right. So, let's say I like camera standard. Camera vivid is a little bit more contrasty the way that I like it. So I'll go with camera vivid. All right. So now what I can do is start tweaking globally my exposure. I typically like to bring my exposures down and then push the contrast up because I like contrasty images. And I'm doing minor tweaks here because this is going to be a back and forth type of edit. In most cases, for me, that's what it is. And then we'll just go ahead and pull up on the midtones. And then I like to darken my shadows. I know a lot of people like to open their shadows, but I really like darker, more deep shadows. That's just a personal preference. And then I also like to pull down on my highlights because I feel like that brings a better balance in the image. Now, with my black and white point, whenever I'm working in the develop module, I like to hold down the J key and pull my black point until I start to see blue. And the J is just activating my clipping indicators. And I'd like to pull this until I have just a little bit of blue in the image. And that's telling me, Chris, you've gone just as dark as you need to over the entire image. So I know that I have a good black point. And then I do the same thing with the white point, but I pull this up until I start to see red. And so right around here, and I don't really want any red in my image. Sometimes I can tolerate it. Like if it's in the background, I don't really care because detail in the background is not as important, especially with an image like this where the background, no one can tell what it is anyway. But I'm holding down the J key right now, and you can see I have no highlight clipping and I have a little bit of clipping in the blacks. All right. So I'll let that go. And now it's time to bring back a little bit of the color, but let's take a look at the before and the after. And you can see I've gotten way more contrasty. It's a little confusing to see when the color comes back in the before, but we're going to come over to effects and we're going to start working with that color. So first thing I do is pull the opacity slider all the way back down, and I'm looking at the image. I know that I have the contrast the way that I want it to be represented, but I don't think that the colors are represented well here. All right. So I'll start by pulling up on the opacity slider of the black and white filter, and that just mutes all of the colors in the image, which I'm okay with. All right. Because what I'm going to do now, and this is the reason why I put the black and white slider on there, is I know that typically I like to subdue my colors before I make them a little bit more rich and vibrant. So now I can come over to add filter and click on color enhancer. And it's time to start working with the colors in the image. So this is above my black and white filter, by the way. I just want to make sure that everyone knows where this first color enhancer is because that does matter. So above the black and white filter, and I'm just going to minimize the styles, get a little bit more real estate here. And I'm going to pull up on the vibrance, but first I'm going to check the reduce vibrance on skin. I'm going to pull up on the vibrance, and you'll see that that starts to bring back some of the more appreciated color in the overall image. And I'm making this adjustment globally at first. If I want to paint this in, I now have the ability to paint it in with a mask. And remember, I am subduing the original colors. So everything I'm adding now is an increase to what was originally in the image. All right. So you got to be careful with this. And that's the reason why, you know, this is probably more aggressive than I would probably like to be, but based off of the color profile, or I'm sorry, the camera profile that I used, I definitely needed to do something a little bit more aggressive to get the colors where I want them to be. And then of course, what I didn't modify is my white balance. So let's go ahead and jump back over to develop. And I'm just going to pull maybe a little bit warmer and then introduce some magenta. Yeah, that's getting me more into the color space that I want to be. All right. So now it's time to kind of ask myself, how else do I want to stylize this? Because I think I have the color where I want it to be. Now it's time to stylize this a little bit further. And this is all subjective. I mean, the whole edit is subjective, but I'm going to keep working with this image, and I'm with the color of the image, I should say. I'm going to click on LUTs, and I love using LUTs. I also love using the match color, but I don't have an image in mind that the match color is going to work well with, which is where LUTs come in really, really great, because color grading, I tend to really enjoy using some of the options in here. Right now, what I'm looking for is something that looks good on the skin. All right. I'm not worried about anything else in the image. I'm only looking at the skin, and I really like classic here. So I'll keep that in mind. And I also like comfort. So, okay, focus. So classic, comfort, focus are my running options. I don't really like insight. Okay, I like keen, and I tend to always find myself liking keen for some reason. So I'm going to go with that. Now, I don't need this over the entire image. I only need it on the person, and I really only need it in the skin. So one of the best ways of making this a reality is to click on it. You can try using the color range mask. I have a video on this. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely watch that video, and I'll just click there and hit the letter O to take a look at the overall photo. That's definitely selecting way more than what I need. So let's see if we can fine tune it to just the skin. And I'm liking where we're getting, and I can always refine this. So I'm not overly concerned about where that is, but that's getting mostly into the skin where I want it to be. Let's see if we can really fade this in, maybe go a little bit broader. Okay. And so now what I can do is just take a brush tool and paint this away completely from the areas where I don't want it. So I'll just fast forward through this because no sense in having you watch me paint. So here's the final mask that I was able to come up with. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for what we're going to be doing today. And I think that it's going to work. So we'll hit the letter O, get rid of that. And let's go ahead and turn this off and then turn it back on. It's very subtle, but it's brightening up the face just a little bit. And of course, if I wanted to saturate this a little bit more, I could, but what I was really trying to do is get a little bit more of an even tone on the face. Now, I'm getting some weird looks on the neck here. So all I need to do to fix that issue will actually pull down on the saturation. Let's hit the letter O. So to fix this, all I'm going to do is take my brush tool, and I'm going to repaint over these areas to include the portions of the skin that may have been removed. So again, lots of back and forth that is required when working in this method. But, you know, this isn't intended to be one of those quick fixes to an image overall. And then we also got some issues here in the eye socket. So let's just go ahead and paint that back in just a bit there. And then what I can do is erase this, but use a brush at a lower flow and opacity. So let's just pull the opacity down, and I can just paint this away little by little. If I hit the letter O, you can see how I'm just painting this away little by little. All right. And that looks a little bit more natural. So his eye sockets were already pretty deep. And then with the contrast adjustments that we've added in, this is looking pretty good. All right, so now I want to do something about the background. I want to darken that down. So I could come into local, but I'm just going to keep it all in effects. We'll use you know what? We'll use a bleach bypass. And the reason I like to use the bleach bypass is it gives a different type of darkening effect than just a negative exposure. So we'll just go ahead and crank that bad boy maybe we'll pull it down. All right, so now we're ready to apply the mask to this. So I'll hit the letter W to get my masking brush, which is the AI masking brush that I love to use. And I am going to select the subject and then invert the mask so that way it applies to the background. So we'll click here and I'm just going to drag a rectangle all the way around him. That makes a pretty good selection. And I'll select all the way around here, and that's good enough for what we're going to be doing today. And I want to erase the subject, so I'm going to click on erase over there, and then I'm going to click on the blue check mark. That's going to commit this. You'll see that the bleach bypass comes off of the subject and goes into the background. And if I crank up on the amount of the bleach bypass, turning this off and on, you can see how that just adds a little bit more contrast and texture to the background and really separates the subject from the background. Makes this, in my opinion, a little bit more interesting. Now, of course, I can make it darker as well. So maybe something like that. And I think that looks good. So you let me know your thoughts about this edit in the comment section below. Here is the before and here is the after. If you want to learn more about using ON1 Photo RAW in your personal workflow, consider signing up for a coaching call with me. A link for that can be found in the description box below. If you got questions about ON1 Photo RAW, or maybe you want to pick it up for a discounted price, consider using my coupon code. That's also found in the description box below. Just know it is an affiliate coupon, which means I make a small commission from everyone who uses it, but that's at no extra charge to you. I greatly appreciate it, and it's a really cool way of supporting this channel. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.